firstly just acknowledge, just as we always do, how important small business is, but it cuts across just so many parts of life. And if anyone can absolutely determine what a small business is, please help me, so that you can give me that definitive one-off. I mean, there's a whole range of, there's an ATO definition, there's an ASIC definition, and my broad definition is it's pretty much nearly all of business, unless you're really in the big category, which is just a few percent. So it's really, and that's why we always refer to small business as being such an integral part of the economy, because it is, and because it represents such a big cut of all working Australians and everything related to everything small business people do. The role that you guys play, of course, is really important about how you manage small business in so many different ways if you're not a small business yourself, or both. Top 10 issues people always raise with me, probably top order would be red tape, paperwork, complexity, all those really difficult areas, and in some part why there are a whole range of businesses, particularly around accountancy and around professional services, to deal with all of that. There are things we can do about that, and there are things that we have been doing. I mean, just as one example, business.gov.au has been a really good place where government's been bringing together, particularly at the three levels of government, local, state and Commonwealth, where can we start to co-locate and give people the one-stop shop. And since my promotion to Parliamentary Secretary for Small Business, one of the things we've been doing out of my office in the small time that I've been there is looking at how can we more and more bring together to make life easier for everybody that's involved in that space. And that it is a big challenge, and I think it'll be an ongoing challenge into the future. I don't think we'll ever get to a position or a day where we go, well, that job's done, let's move to something else. It is a big challenge, and I don't think we can get away from the complexities that exist in life. Depending on the type of business you have, it's going to be more or less complex. I mean, if you're going to be in the food industry, for example, you've got to meet a whole heap of local government requirements, state, and of course there's going to be some Commonwealth and everything that flows from that. The business names register is one example of government taking solid action. That takes 8 disparate databases right across the country that will basically, if you're a national enterprise, which for most it is, was an absolute nightmare. And it is now a one-stop shop in terms of registering. Not only is it effective and efficient, but it's cheap. If you had to register your business name across all jurisdictions, it would cost you over $1,000. If you do it online now, it costs you $70, 3 years. It's really good, and it does mean, and for the majority, it's worked really, really well. There have been some teething problems. Whenever you bring that many databases together, there are going to be some issues. We've increased funding for ASIC to be able to manage that and do a better job of it. But when you have a look at the numbers and have a look how much has gone through this new system, it is phenomenal and it is working really well. Look, in the area of taxation, which I know people talk about, the first one is to say we've tripled the tax-free threshold from 6,000 to 18,000. That affects every single one of us, wherever you are and whatever form of organisation you're in. The other, particularly in terms of being able to write off assets, so the $6,500 instant asset write-off, I don't know why, but it hasn't quite sort of made its way out there yet that everyone's accessing it. They should be, and certainly people should be giving advice. And it's uncapped, it's unlimited. It is a phenomenal tool to instant, and it makes an enormous difference. And in fact, this week we'll be launching an app, a website where you can just quickly plug in some basic numbers which show you what you expect you can save out of this measure, the difference between pre and post. And it's quite significant, so it's a really good. It's particularly good also that we're doing the tax loss carryback. So if you understand how that works, it's not just about whether you make a loss or not. It's a little bit more involved. For a lot of businesses, you can use the business cycle and determine when your expenditure is to best manage your own profits or losses. And so what this does is says that if you have made a loss in the past, you'll be able to carry that forward and actually get a return back on that. So it's up to $1 million, so effectively $300,000 for a business, depending on what their circumstances are. Government is more and more conscious of not just lip service, but real service delivery for small business. So whether it's through services, small business assistance service, whether it's hotlines, whether it's websites, it's about providing advice and support. It's about providing the tools so that small business can help themselves. It's making sure that we've got the supporting mechanisms in place. Whether it's in taxation and continue looking at ways we can better, facilitate good, sound tax practices, I think that's really good. and whether it's in red tape reduction and acknowledging that, yes, there is, and I think there's, in that area too, I think it's a bit about all of us managing the expectation gap. So making sure that people, when they either get into small business or they're in a business, understand that we all have a responsibility to do. There is some paperwork involved. And lastly, just the concept or thought in this area that regulation and rules and laws aren't just there to be a hindrance to us. If you're a small business, they're there to protect you. If you're a small business, they're there to ensure that you have a system that gives you certainty, that you know what the system is, that you know what the rules of engagement are, that you know how to play the game. So it's about compliance, about all those things, but it's about protecting people, whether they're a business or whether they're a consumer. It's about protecting all of us. And of course the difficulty is how we manage all of those things all at once. Unfortunately, in an environment where negativity reigns, and reigns on us every single day, trying to lift something positive out of that is exceptionally difficult. And while no one denies that, you know, globally we're in hard economic times, and so are we here in Australia, I think that's just a known quantity. The reality is that for every bad bit of news, there's a good bit of news. That, you know, jobs have remained steady and continue to grow. That economy since 2007 has grown by 14%. Compare that to any other economy, and we're miles ahead. That doesn't mean to say we're lucky. It just means to say that you have to have some balance in these things. The fact that interest rates are historically low, access to finance, I understand, for small business is an issue, but there's a whole range of complexities around how that works. And, you know, acknowledging that NABs here and other banks actually are doing work in that area, and government's actually been talking to banks about how do we better facilitate this. I mean, it's always going to be a transactional arrangement. It's a commercial contract between, you know, individual A and their lender as to how that works out. So in that area, confidence is a black sort of art in the sense of how you lift confidence. I mean, every time you turn on the TV, you're seeing something blowing up, or, you know, a share market going down. It's just not going to be inducive. Certainly all the language from us and everything has been about building confidence. In terms of what we've actually been doing, one of my areas of push for a very long time before people could spell innovation was that if you understand productivity, it relates back to innovation, and that equals jobs. And there's this triangle around these three things that is inescapable. And if any government is ever serious about how do we, you know, lift ourselves and grow that confidence, you have to do something positive. The days of us, you know, we like to traditionally see ourselves as riding the sheep's back and dust-covered miners and, you know, tinkerers in the garage, inventing the in-flight black box and Wi-Fi, all fantastic. That was last century. What are we going to do this century? Well, we have to innovate. And the government's put forward a substantial amount of money to promote innovation, which equals jobs growth. So we've got 10 precincts. By the end of July, I hope that we'll be announcing all 10 in food manufacturing, in niche manufacturing, and we're not determining what they are. We've said to the world out there, research, universities, business, conglomerates, come together, put your applications forward. We've had 54 significant applications of serious players who understand the benefit that this brings. This will lift confidence. This will take us to the 21st century and the 18th century about what we can do as Australians, about that innovative front. Because if you ever think that where we are today is satisfactory, you're already moving backwards. We all understand this. This is not, you know, I'm not saying anything I think which is unusual. It's not much about running faster. It's always about where's your competition at. And the reality is that in our neighbourhood, in Asia Pacific, there are economies now that are spending 2, 3 and 4 times the amounts we do on education. Have a look at the economies that were well and truly behind us and where they are now. And they're continuing to grow in that area because they understand the value of that investing. Investing in education, investing in schools, investing in innovation, investing in the future. So all of those things combined, while it's complex, in the end it's not that hard. You know, nearly all of expenditure on education is actually well below the threshold. But there are some excesses. And at some point, governments, if you want us to be responsible, manage budgets, manage the economy, you do set boundaries. And you say to people, it's fine, self-education is something worthwhile and therefore you should promote it. But there already exists a known quantity of averages and median and where the upper levels are of real expenditure on real self-education. And there's a few who might, just a few, very few, who might abuse the system. You always need to take those out. because in tough economic times, you've got to take tough economic decisions. Part of our responsibility to not have that system abused to the point where it's unsustainable. It's a bit like pharmaceuticals and medicine and other things. You have really tight reins on this stuff, because if you let it go for even just 1 year, you face a potential collapse of that really first-class system we've got.